Welcome to TOCHI Stories. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notification because it will mean the whole world to me. Now let's get right into the story. Brace yourself. The air inside Amanda's boutique office was thick with tension, as if grief and confusion had moved in and claimed the furniture. Amanda stood by the window, arms folded across her chest, while Obiajulu sat on the small visitor's couch. The only thing separating them more than space was heartbreak. He looked nothing like the man she had fallen for, not because his clothes were rumpled or his eyes weary, but because trust had broken something deeper than appearance could hide. "I didn't ask her to come," he said softly. "I didn't even know she'd be there that day." "Amanda, I swear." She raised a hand to stop him, her expression unreadable. "I'm not ready to hear what you swear. Just tell me the truth, Obiajulu. Why did you go back to her?" His mouth opened slightly, but no words came at first. The truth was messy, the timing worse, and the damage already done. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers clasped together like a man kneeling before judgment. "She called me. She said she was sick, dying. I didn't believe her at first, but she sounded so broken. I just wanted to see how she was doing. I swear, Amanda, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about going back. I don't love her. Not anymore. Not even a little." Amanda remained silent, staring out the window, blinking slowly. Her silence made him nervous. "You should have told me," she said finally. Before she told me, in the most humiliating way possible. Obiajulu's head snapped up. "Told you what?" Amanda turned then, slowly, her eyes glassy. "I got a message, anonymous, of course. Said you used me to become rich. Said you came back to your real home. Said I was nothing but a rehab." Obiajulu's mouth fell open, horror crawling over his face. "Amanda, no. That's not true. You know that's not true." But even as he said it, the air between them no longer carried certainty. It carried doubt. Amanda stepped back toward her desk, her arms still crossed, as if holding her ribs together. "You know what hurts more than anything," she whispered. "It's not the kiss. It's not the message. It's not even that you went back to her. It's that I believed you were different. That I finally opened up to someone who wouldn't lie to me." Obiajulu stood slowly, not wanting to raise his voice, not wanting to beg. "I didn't lie. I didn't tell you everything soon enough. I didn't think it would matter this much." Amanda laughed bitterly. "It always matters, Obiajulu, especially when people like us have been broken before." She looked at him one last time. "I need space." His chest tightened. "Amanda, please." But she shook her head. "Not now." And just like that, the woman who once helped him rebuild walked away, not with anger, but with sadness deep enough to drown 1,000 apologies. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of peaceful silence that comes with healing. This was the cold silence of avoidance. Amanda stopped responding to Obiajulu's calls. The boutique, once their meeting point filled with laughter and shared glances, now became purely transactional. She would leave instructions with her assistant, pick up Daniel without waiting around, and never look back. Obiajulu tried to respect her space. He told himself she needed time, but every second without her felt like punishment. He wanted to run to her, shout the truth, and erase Linda from existence. But nothing he said would undo the image Amanda saw. Her walking in just as his past wrapped itself around him again. Even though he hadn't wanted the kiss, even though his body stiffened in that moment, Amanda had still walked in, and that moment had still happened. He stayed up late that week, pacing his office, replaying the confrontation, Amanda's face, the anonymous message. How could Linda do this? She hadn't just lied. She had planned it, orchestrated it, waited for Amanda to walk in. And yet he had no proof. Just a gut feeling and a heart that felt sucker-punched by betrayal. Worse still, Amanda hadn't accused him of cheating. She hadn't thrown a tantrum or screamed at him. Her pain had been calm. And that, Obiajulu realized, made it hurt more. He missed Daniel too. The boy had grown on him like a son he never had. The idea that he might now be locked out of that family, a family he had started to feel part of, was breaking him more than poverty ever did. He had fought so hard to build a new life, only to see it unravel with one kiss he never wanted. Amanda, on her end, tried to carry on. She smiled at customers, updated stock records, helped Daniel with homework. But inside, she was hollow. She hated how much she missed Obiajulu. Hated that she checked her phone for his messages, and then forced herself not to reply. She hadn't even told her friends about the kiss. It felt too private, too sacred, too shameful. And the worst part? She still didn't fully believe Linda. Her gut told her Obiajulu was telling the truth, but her heart had been tricked before. And the anonymous message? It still echoed in her head like poison. She needed clarity. But the only man who could give it to her had already stood, once again, with another woman's lips on his. The first time Amanda saw Tunde again, it was on a Thursday morning outside Daniel's school. He was leaning against a black Toyota Camry, hands in his pockets, watching the children pour out of the building. For a moment, she froze. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't seen her ex-husband in almost a year, and yet here he was, wearing a clean white shirt, designer wristwatch, and that familiar smirk that always danced just beneath his polished surface. When she approached, he smiled casually. "I thought we could talk," he said. "Maybe just 5 minutes. Nothing heavy." Amanda sighed and nodded reluctantly. Tunde wasn't a monster. He was just a man who had let pride and infidelity destroy their marriage. She didn't hate him. She just didn't trust him. They sat in the car. He handed her a bouquet of white roses. "For the best co-parent in the world," he said with a chuckle. Amanda didn't smile. Their conversation was light at first, Daniel's school performance, work, the rising cost of fuel, until Tunde's tone shifted. "So, this guy I've been hearing about. The one always around my son," he said slowly. Amanda stiffened. "Obiajulu is a good man," she replied, firm but cautious. Tunde tilted his head. "A good man who got caught kissing his ex-wife." Amanda looked away. "You heard?" He nodded. "Things like that float around, especially when someone's image is on the rise. I'm just saying, Amanda, maybe you need to be careful. You've built something solid. Don't let another broken man pull you down again." Amanda's jaw clenched. "He's not broken." Tunde leaned closer. "Then why does it feel like you're the one trying to hold everything together while he's out there, being complicated?" The words landed with weight, not because they were true, but because they echoed the fears she hadn't yet voiced. Later that night, Amanda sat in bed, staring at the roses Tunde had given her, now sitting in a vase on the table. She hated that they looked beautiful. She hated that his words, though manipulative, weren't entirely wrong. Her heart was still with Obiajulu, but her mind was tired of pain. Tunde, with all his flaws, was predictable, safe. He represented a version of life she had already survived, which, in her current emotional state, felt easier than risking another heartbreak. She wasn't ready to forgive him, but she was no longer sure she could fight for Obiajulu either. And so, as the roses bloomed in silence, Amanda found herself sitting at the edge of a dangerous choice, one between the man who once hurt her and the man who just did. The restaurant Tunde chose was intentional, quiet, upscale, and just pretentious enough to remind Amanda of the old days when he used to show off in public and apologize in private. They sat by the window, sipping from expensive glasses of fruit punch that tasted like guilt disguised as charm. Amanda wore a modest cream blouse and a tired smile. She hadn't planned for dinner, only to pick Daniel up. But Tunde had insisted. "Just 30 minutes, he'd said. "Let's talk like old friends, parents at least." She agreed. They spoke casually at first about Daniel's schoolwork, how well he read now, how he still refused to eat vegetables. But it didn't take long for Tunde's conversation to drift away from parenting and into something darker. "You know," he said softly, playing with a straw in his glass, "some people only show you love when it suits their story, when they've made it. But the minute you need real sacrifice, they show you their past is still calling them home." Amanda frowned slightly. She didn't reply immediately. Tunde leaned in. "That man, Obiajulu, I hear things. I watch. It's what men do when their children are involved. And from what I've gathered, he's still emotionally tied to that woman." Amanda's heart stilled. "He said she's dying," she said quietly. "That's why he saw her." Tunde raised an eyebrow. "And you believe that?" he asked, voice laced with disbelief. "Amanda, sickness doesn't resurrect old feelings unless something was buried shallow. Trust me, I know men." He didn't go to say goodbye. He went to remember. Amanda swallowed hard, unsure if it was from anger or confusion. Tunde continued, "I'm not trying to control you. I just don't want another man planting promises in my son's life and disappearing when things get messy. He's already lost one father figure. I won't let it happen again." That last line hit Amanda hard. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a threat cloaked in parental concern. She nodded slowly, trying not to let her face show what was boiling inside her. "Daniel deserves stability," she finally said. "That's all I want for him." Tunde smiled, victorious. "Exactly. And you've always been good at giving him that, even when I failed." Amanda looked away, unsure if she felt flattered or cornered. After the meal, he walked her to her car, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You know, I made mistakes, Amanda. Big ones. But I never stopped admiring the kind of woman you are. You're rare. Don't let someone's unfinished past write your ending." She drove home that night in silence, Tunde's words looping through her mind. And though she hated herself for it, part of her began to wonder, what if Tunde was right? What if Obiajulu wasn't ready to let go of the fire that once burned him? Amanda sat at her desk, flipping through supplier invoices and logistics contracts. But none of it made sense. The words swam across the page, numbers dancing out of order. Her mind was elsewhere. Obiajulu hadn't called that morning. For the first time in weeks, her phone was silent, and that silence roared in her ears like betrayal. She knew it was unfair to expect him to chase her endlessly after she'd asked for space, but deep down, she wanted proof that she still mattered, that she was worth fighting for. Just then, her phone buzzed. A new message. The number was hidden, unknown, but the content stopped her breath. "He came back to me. He never left. You were just a rehab center for a broken man. He used you to fix himself. I'm his true home, always was. And now that he's whole again, he's where he belongs. Goodbye." Amanda's hand trembled as she read it again and again, each line a dagger laced in venom. She looked up, trying to steady her breathing. Her assistant walked in, asking about a resupply order, but Amanda waved her away. She shut the office door, sat slowly on the edge of the couch, and stared at the wall. Was it Linda? It had to be. But why now? Why this? Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with that old, familiar ache, the one she'd felt when Tunde cheated on her the second time and made her feel like she wasn't enough. Amanda wasn't naive. She knew the text was meant to provoke her. Still, it worked. She picked up her phone and hovered over Obiajulu's name, but didn't call. What would she say? That a ghost from his past had whispered something that resurrected every insecurity she thought she'd buried? Instead, she locked the screen and placed the phone down slowly. She didn't cry. Not this time. Tears would have been too easy, too cleansing. What she felt now was something worse. Doubt. Heavy, thick, poisonous doubt. What if I am just a phase? What if he needed me to recover, but never meant to stay? She stood, walked to the mirror behind her office door, and stared at her own reflection. "Don't fall apart," she whispered to herself. Not again. But the mirror didn't lie. She already was. And outside, the world moved on. Clients entered the boutique. The cashier smiled. The delivery guy checked in. But inside Amanda's mind a storm was beginning to rage. The emotional shift in Amanda was subtle at first, like the way dry leaves start falling one by one before anyone notices the tree is dying. She didn't scream at Obiajulu. She didn't block his number. She simply stopped engaging. When he texted, she replied with single-word answers. When he called, she let it ring out. At the boutique, she busied herself with meaningless tasks, restocking shelves that didn't need restocking, reviewing invoices already paid, double-checking deliveries Daniel could have handled. The silence between them grew louder, but Obiajulu didn't understand why. He kept asking if she was okay, if they could talk. But Amanda didn't want to talk, not until her heart stopped trembling every time she saw his name. She just wanted to feel nothing, because right now, nothing was safer than feeling everything. Daniel noticed the change first. He asked why Uncle Obi wasn't coming around anymore. Amanda said he was busy. When Daniel insisted on calling him, she distracted him with sweets and homework. But the truth gnawed at her. She missed Obiajulu deeply. But between Tunde's whispers, the anonymous message, and the image of that kiss she could not unsee, her heart was caught in a war between memory and meaning. Was Obiajulu truly the man who stood beside her when she was tired? Or was he just passing through her life to heal from his past? The question plagued her until she began to doubt everything. Not just him, but herself. Maybe she was too damaged to know real love when she saw it. Maybe she had become so used to betrayal that she mistook temporary loyalty for permanence. And so, she began allowing Tunde not into her heart, but into her space. He came over more frequently, helped Daniel with school projects, cooked dinner once or twice. Amanda didn't love him. She didn't even trust him. But she allowed his presence because it asked for nothing, and in her exhaustion, that felt easier to manage. Obiajulu, watching from the outside, felt the shift. He began calling less. He told himself she needed time, but deep down, he feared he had already lost her. He didn't know about the message. He didn't know that Linda's manipulation had already taken root in Amanda's mind like a vine around a tree. He only knew that the woman who once saw him as a man worth saving now looked at him like a memory she was trying to erase. The day Obiajulu decided to show up at Amanda's house, it wasn't out of impatience or desperation. It was out of love. It had been almost 2 weeks since they spoke properly, and the distance was beginning to corrode his spirit. He hadn't been sleeping, hadn't been eating well either. He tried everything, gave her space, sent her thoughtful messages, even dropped off a handwritten note at her boutique, but nothing worked. That morning, he'd stood at his window for nearly an hour, watching the traffic flow, and remembering the warmth in Amanda's voice when she once called him safe. He missed her, missed Daniel, missed the feeling of being part of a world that gave him something to fight for. So he ironed a clean shirt, wore his best shoes, and bought her favorite yellow roses before driving to her home unannounced. He told himself he wasn't crossing any boundaries. He just needed 5 minutes. 5 minutes to clear the fog, to reach her heart again. But when he got to the house and rang the bell, it wasn't Amanda who answered. It was Tunde, shirtless, holding a glass of wine. The sight hit Obiajulu like a slap made of silence. For a moment, both men simply stared at each other, their pasts colliding in the air between them like two storms meeting at sea. Tunde was the first to speak. "You must be lost," he said with that sly smile, stepping outside and closing the door halfway behind him. Obiajulu's grip tightened around the bouquet, but he kept his tone level. "I came to see Amanda. I didn't realize you'd moved in." Tunde chuckled. "Well, you know how it is. Some of us return to what's real. Others just pass through to heal." Obiajulu swallowed his anger. Let her speak for herself. Just then, Amanda appeared behind the curtain inside. She had seen everything. Her face was pale, her arms crossed defensively. She walked slowly to the door, opened it wider, and stood beside Tunde. "Obi," she said softly, "I think we need space." The words were like cold iron. Obiajulu's heart sank. "Amanda, please. Just let me explain what happened. That day at Linda's, it wasn't what it looked like." Amanda's expression didn't change. "I believe you," she said. "But belief doesn't always erase pain." Tunde stood back with a smug smirk as Amanda continued. "I asked for space. And showing up like this, without calling, without warning, it feels like pressure. And I don't want pressure right now." Obiajulu stepped back slowly. "I understand," he said, his voice low. He handed her the flowers. She didn't take them, then placed them gently on the floor beside the doorway. "I'll respect your space," he whispered. He turned and walked away. The door shut behind him with a soft thud. And inside the house, Amanda leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, her entire body trembling, not from anger, but from the ache of letting go. Linda sat at her small kitchen table, the radio playing low-life gossip in the background, a steaming mug of untouched tea in front of her. Her apartment was dimly lit, curtains drawn to maintain the illusion of illness. In the corner sat a brand new oxygen tank, a rented prop. Beside her was a forged medical report detailing late-stage cancer, with vague language to throw off suspicion. She'd paid the printing guy extra to laminate it. No doctor had ever seen her, but the act was airtight. Her timing had been perfect. The moment Amanda began pulling away from Obiajulu, Linda had pounced. First, an anonymous message. Now, the performance of a lifetime. She picked up her phone, turned on her cracked voice recorder, and practiced her lines. Obi, I'm not calling to cause trouble. I don't have long, and before I go, I needed to see you. Please. She practiced the cough too, raspy, pathetic, and just weak enough to pull sympathy from even a stranger. She didn't call right away. She waited. Waited until the day Amanda's silence had become concrete and Obiajulu's heart was sagging under confusion. Then she dialed from a private number. Her voice was shaky, her breathing labored. Obi, she whispered. I just wanted to say goodbye. I've been sick. It's cancer. Stage 4. I didn't want to tell you before, but I'm getting weaker. I don't even have the strength to walk some days. There was a long pause. Linda smiled. She could hear his breath catching. I know I was terrible to you. I don't deserve your time. I want to say I'm sorry. And if God calls me tomorrow, at least I'd know I said that much to you. Obiajulu said nothing at first. Then, where are you? Her eyes lit up. Same place. Just come if you can. If you can't, I understand. He said, I'll come tomorrow. She ended the call, dropped the phone, and danced barefoot in her living room. You're still mine, Obiajulu, she whispered, spinning slowly. No matter what she thinks. That night, Linda prepared the scene. She lit a small candle beside her bed, lay a tattered Bible open on the side table, and wore an oversized headscarf. She turned off all lights except the one above her bed and even dabbed powder beneath her eyes to appear hollow. She set out her fake hospital report where Obiajulu would see it, but not inspect it. And then she lay down, arms crossed over her chest like a woman preparing for burial. The next day, as footsteps echoed in her hallway, and Obiajulu knocked gently at her door, Linda took a deep breath, pinched her cheeks for redness, and whispered, Let the curtain rise. She would make him believe he owed her just one hug, just one last memory, and then she'd own his ruin. Obiajulu stepped into the dim apartment, instantly greeted by the scent of menthol and old fabric softener. The light from the single bulb above Linda's bed cast everything in a weak yellow hue. She lay on the mattress, a blanket tucked up to her chest, hands trembling, lips pale, or painted to appear so. For a brief second, he thought she actually looked sick. But he pushed the doubt aside. Her eyes met his, soft and watery. Obi, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You came. He nodded slowly. You asked me to. I'm not here for anything more than what you said. Linda smiled weakly and patted the chair beside her bed. Just sit. I won't take your time. I just wanted to see you one last time. You look successful. He sat down cautiously, heart conflicted. He should have brought someone with him. Should have told Amanda. But somehow this felt necessary. Closure, perhaps. Redemption for what once went wrong. For the first 10 minutes, she spoke softly about the past. About the days when he used to write her poems, how he used to rub her feet even when he had nothing to eat. She wept once, dabbing her face with tissue. I was blind, Obi. I mocked you. And now, see what life has done to me. I can't even walk without trembling. Obiajulu remained silent, his face stoic, but a knot was forming in his stomach. Something about the whole scene didn't sit right, but he couldn't pinpoint it. Finally, she turned to him and said, Please. I'm not asking for much. Just give me a hug, so I can remember what peace felt like one last time. He hesitated. Linda, she shook her head. Nothing more. Just that. Please. His heart softened. Against better judgment, he rose to his feet and leaned in. She wrapped her arms around him tightly. It was supposed to be brief. But then she kissed him. Hard. Mouth trembling against his. Before he could pull away, a gasp tore through the room like thunder. The front door was open. Amanda stood there, her eyes wide, hands trembling, her purse falling from her fingers. Obiajulu, she choked out, her voice shaking. He turned instantly, pushing Linda away, but it was too late. The damage was done. Amanda backed away slowly, disbelief carved into every inch of her face. No, not again. Not again, she muttered as she turned and bolted down the hallway. Amanda, wait! Obiajulu shouted, but she was gone. Linda collapsed back on the bed with a faint smile, her hand gently touching her lips. Stage complete, she whispered to herself, her eyes glistening, not from tears, but from victory. Amanda didn't remember how she drove home. The images replayed in her mind like a haunting slideshow. Obiajulu's arms wrapped around Linda, Linda's frail hands gripping him. And then that kiss. That single bitter kiss. She could still see the look of shock on his face when he turned and saw her. But in her mind, it didn't matter. He shouldn't have gone there. He shouldn't have touched her. And most importantly, he shouldn't have given her the chance. Amanda pulled into her compound and slammed the car door with such force it echoed through the quiet evening. She stormed into the house, ignoring Daniel's greetings and collapsing on the couch with a deep, guttural scream. The betrayal felt like a crack running down her spine, splitting open every ounce of vulnerability she had offered him. And the worst part? She had trusted him more than she ever trusted Tunde, or any man. Upstairs, Daniel stood in the hallway, peeking down in confusion. His mother never screamed, never collapsed like that. She was always composed, steady, a woman who could command a room with just her silence. But tonight she was trembling, angry, broken. He walked slowly down the steps, pausing halfway when she looked up at him with tear-streaked cheeks. "Uncle Obi won't be coming around anymore," she said, her voice low and sharp. "Forget him." Daniel frowned. But why? He didn't do anything wrong. That sentence hit Amanda like a punch. Even her son had grown to see the goodness in Obiajulu. And now she was the one destroying that image. But she couldn't explain. Not now. Not until the rage cleared. "Go upstairs, Daniel," she said. "Please." The boy obeyed, but his face was heavy with questions. Amanda sat there, staring at the blank television screen, gripping the hem of her blouse like it could hold her together. Meanwhile, Obiajulu stood outside Linda's, flat in disbelief. His voice was hoarse from calling Amanda's name. The moment Amanda left, he had turned on Linda with a kind of fury he had never shown before. "Why would you do that? Why would you kiss me?" he yelled. Linda lay back in her bed, her face the picture of calm satisfaction. "Because I wanted to," she said softly. "And you let me." That sentence crushed him. He hadn't intended for any of this to happen. He had come out of pity, out of compassion, not desire. He picked up his phone and called Amanda again. No answer. Then again, still nothing. He didn't know what to do next. He couldn't undo the moment, couldn't delete it from Amanda's eyes. And now, the only woman who had seen him rise, who helped him rebuild, had walked away. He left Linda's house in silence, his face hollow, his heart heavy. He had come to give closure, but what he received was a wound deeper than any Linda had ever inflicted in their marriage. Amanda didn't sleep that night. Her phone buzzed more than 10 times between midnight and 4 a.m., each time flashing Obiajulu's name, but she refused to answer. She had blocked him on WhatsApp, blocked him on Instagram, and she almost blocked his number altogether, but a part of her couldn't. She needed to know he was still trying, still regretting, still in pain. But she wouldn't let him back in. Not again. Not after everything. She buried her face in her pillow and screamed into it until her throat felt raw. The tears never stopped. Not even when Daniel came into the room in the morning and quietly placed a bottle of water beside her. "You forgot to eat dinner," he said. Then he walked away, eyes downcast. Amanda stared at the ceiling and whispered, "God, why does it always end like this?" As the day dragged on, Amanda forced herself out of bed and into the shower. She stood under the water for what felt like hours, letting it scald her skin, hoping it would wash away the images from her mind. But they clung to her. That kiss, that betrayal, that look of guilt on Obiajulu's face. And beneath the pain was something worse, disappointment. She had let herself believe again. She had let herself feel safe. And she had been wrong. Again. By noon, she dressed and walked to the kitchen, determined to cook something for Daniel. He was watching cartoons, but didn't seem fully present. "Mummy, can I ask something?" he said suddenly. She looked at him. "What is it?" He hesitated. "If someone makes a mistake, does that mean they're a bad person?" The question made her heart twist. "Not always," she said quietly. "But some mistakes change everything." Elsewhere, Obiajulu sat in his office, staring at a blank document on his laptop. He had written and rewritten a message to Amanda over 10 times, each one longer and more desperate than the last. But none of them captured what he truly felt. Because how could they? How do you tell someone that the worst moment of their life was never meant to happen? That you made a terrible, accidental choice, and it cost you everything? He thought about visiting her again, but he knew it would only worsen things. He needed to give her space. And yet, every second of that space felt like suffocation. He missed Daniel's laughter, missed Amanda's steady eyes. He missed having a place where he didn't feel like an outsider. The success around him felt empty now. His employees smiled at him, clients praised him, but his soul felt like it was standing alone on a cold rooftop, waiting for a door that would never open again. Obiajulu woke the next morning with one resolve. He had to speak to Amanda, even if she never forgave him. She deserved the truth, the full truth, not just fragments whispered in a moment of chaos. He picked up a pen and began to write. No emails, no messages, just ink and paint on paper. The letter was 3 pages long. He told her everything. How Linda had manipulated the illness, how she had begged to see him one last time, and how he had gone out of compassion, not affection. He admitted he shouldn't have gone alone, that the hug was a mistake, that the kiss was never welcomed, never wanted, and most importantly, that she, Amanda, was the only woman he had ever truly respected. By the end of the letter, his hands were shaking. He folded it gently, placed it in an envelope, and wrote her name on the front like a prayer. He drove to her boutique, heart pounding. He didn't go inside. He handed the letter to a staff member with strict instructions. Please, only Amanda should see this. Then he walked away, hoping, praying she would read it. Meanwhile, Amanda sat in her office upstairs, still dazed. Her friends had been checking in on her, sending her screenshots of Linda's cryptic social posts. They always return home eventually, and love wins after all. Every time she saw one, she felt her stomach churn. Was this what Obiajulu had meant when he said he was done with Linda? If so, then everything he told her was a lie. Her heart told her otherwise, but her pride screamed louder. When the staff brought her the letter, she didn't open it right away. She stared at the envelope for nearly 20 minutes. Then, with trembling hands, she began to read. And with every line, her eyes filled with tears. By the end of the letter, she was sobbing silently, clutching the paper to her chest. But it was too late. The pain had already spread too deep. Her pride, her wounded heart, the image of that kiss, they still loomed large. She didn't call him, didn't message him. She folded the letter back carefully, wiped her face, and placed it in her desk drawer. Outside, the day looked normal. The world moved on. But inside Amanda, the war continued. Love wanted to forgive, but betrayal had already moved in, unpacked its bags, and made itself at home. Tunde had been patient long enough. Ever since Amanda's breakdown, he had positioned himself as the man who understood her past, the safe, familiar option in the storm of her heartbreak. He brought Daniel new shoes, cooked dinner twice, waited in the car for school runs. And more than anything, he listened, not out of empathy, but out of strategy. Amanda was still emotionally scattered, nursing the deep wound left by Obiajulu's betrayal. Every time she looked at Tunde, she reminded herself that maybe comfort was better than hope. At least she knew what she was getting. And maybe she was just tired of hurting. So when Tunde offered to stay over just in case Daniel had nightmares, she didn't fight it. She simply nodded and turned away. But Tunde didn't miss it, the flicker of surrender in her eyes. And that was all the permission he needed to inch his way deeper. Daniel, however, was not fooled. He watched his father quietly from the shadows of their home. To a child, love looks like presence, but trust looks like consistency. And Tunde had never been consistent. Uncle Obi had been. Even though Amanda tried to hide it, Daniel could feel something was off. He had seen his mother smile less, laugh less. And now, with Tunde always around, he began to draw into himself. Amanda noticed the shift, the way he avoided conversations, how his once joyful energy turned into half-hearted nods. One evening, Daniel asked a question that hit her harder than she expected. Is Daddy staying forever now, because Uncle Obi hurt you? Amanda froze. She wasn't ready to answer. And perhaps, in that silence, Daniel understood more than she thought. He walked away before she could speak. Meanwhile, Obiajulu remained quiet, nursing his pain with dignity. He had not received a reply to the letter, not even a sign. But he knew Amanda had read it. He could feel it. Still, he chose not to push any further. Instead, he poured his energy into expanding his logistics company and keeping up appearances. Inside, however, he was haunted by a sense of incompletion, a truth trapped in someone else's mouth. He had dreams of Amanda's eyes, of Daniel calling him Uncle Obi again. But dreams were no match for Linda's deception and Tunde's intrusion. He didn't know Linda was quietly watching him rise again. He didn't know she had a second phase of manipulation planned. Because Linda wasn't finished. Not while Amanda still breathed in his memories. Linda sat at her small vanity, applying light powder to her cheeks, as she glanced at the forged hospital report beside her. The paper bore all the convincing stamps: terminal cervical cancer, stage 4, doctored blood panels, and even a fake digital doctor's signature. She had spent days perfecting it, using a free online template and adjusting it with Photoshop. And now, the world was beginning to believe it. Obiajulu's visit had gone exactly as she hoped. The kiss may have been forced, but it had achieved the goal: drive Amanda away. What Linda didn't expect was how easy it was. All it took was one moment, one trigger, and Amanda unraveled. She sat back, crossed her legs, and whispered into her phone's microphone, "One more step, and he'll be mine again." She posted another cryptic caption: "My last wish granted. Thank you for loving me till the end." Online, the reaction was mixed. Some sent prayers, others offered emotional support. And the gossip pages? They ran wild with speculation. Obiajulu seen visiting terminally ill ex-wife, old flames rekindled, read one headline. Billionaire husband comforts dying ex, love story or scandal, said another. Linda screenshot each one and saved them to a folder. She loved the attention. She fed off it. But what she craved more was Amanda's pain. The idea that the same woman who once stole her husband's heart was now watching him drift back. That was Linda's real prize. She hadn't won Obiajulu back yet, but the chaos she had created felt like victory. And as long as no one questioned the medical report, which was conveniently printed without a traceable clinic, her lie remained airtight. What she didn't know was how far the consequences of that lie would go. Amanda sat in her boutique, staring at another online article. Her friends had been sending them all week, accompanied by texts like, "Wow, is this real?" or "I'm so sorry, babe." The world believed Linda. And because Amanda had walked away without hearing Obiajulu's voice, she too had begun to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had gone back for reasons deeper than pity. Her chest ached with questions. Had he ever truly loved her? Was she just a temporary place to heal? She replayed moments with him in her mind, trying to distinguish between sincerity and performance. But no matter how hard she tried, the kiss had left a stain too dark to ignore. And Linda's words, written between the lines of every post, echoed like a prophecy. He always returns to the one who knows his beginning. Linda's online campaign grew bolder with each passing day. One morning, she posted a throwback photo of her and Obiajulu from their wedding, captioned, "Some love never dies. It simply forgets how to speak for a while." The photo trended within hours. Followers flooded the comments with heart emojis, condolence messages, and os. It painted a false, poetic image of a woman dying with grace and a man returning to honor her last days. Amanda saw it the moment she opened Instagram, and her stomach twisted violently. She threw her phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Her assistant ran in, startled. "Ma, are you okay?" Amanda stood still, her fists clenched. "Clear my schedule today. I don't want to see anyone." The assistant nodded, sensing a storm far too personal to understand. Across town, Obiajulu scrolled through the same photo on his feed, his jaw tightening. He had told Linda not to post anything. He had specifically asked her to keep things private. And now she had weaponized that moment of weakness and turned it into public currency. He called her, no answer. He texted her, "What are you doing? This is not okay. You're crossing a line." Linda replied hours later with a simple voice note, laced with a trembling voice. "I'm sorry. I just wanted the world to know you didn't abandon me. It's all I have left." And like that, the guilt returned, heavy and intrusive. He didn't respond. He simply stared at the post again, wondering how a single lie could travel so far, so fast, and with so much applause. He feared what it would do to Amanda if she hadn't already decided to move on. And Amanda had begun moving, but not in the direction he hoped. Tunde had been watching the unfolding drama closely. He used it to his advantage, telling Amanda over dinner, "This is why I warned you. You can't build a future with someone still entangled in their past." His voice was calm, fatherly, but tinged with smugness. Amanda didn't argue. She simply sipped her wine, nodded slowly, and allowed the bitterness to settle. Daniel didn't say much these days, either. He missed Obiajulu, though he wouldn't say it aloud anymore. At school, he had become more reserved. Teachers noticed. And though Amanda loved her son deeply, her own emotional fog had started to blind her to his needs. The house was quiet most days, too quiet. Like something important had left, and no one knew how to name it. And outside that silence, Linda smiled. Because for now her fire was spreading, and no one knew where the smoke truly came from. Daniel no longer smiled in the mornings. The once lively boy who used to sing while brushing his teeth or draw cartoons on the foggy bathroom mirror had gone quiet. Amanda noticed, but she didn't know what to say. Her world had shifted so dramatically over the past few weeks that the silence in her home had become almost expected. A dull ache she ignored to survive. Tunde, always perceptive when it served his interests, tried to distract Daniel with expensive toys and weekend outings. But Daniel never asked for those. He didn't want new things. He wanted old things restored. He wanted his mother's smile to come back. He wanted the gentle voice of Obiajulu calling him champion while they read storybooks. He wanted the security he once found in that quiet man's presence. Now everything felt artificial, mechanical, cold. When he came home from school one day with a fight report, Amanda's frustration exploded. "Why are you behaving like this?" she snapped. Daniel didn't reply. He just looked at her with tired eyes and walked into his room. At school, Daniel's teachers had started to worry. His grades were slipping, his concentration faltering. The boy who once stayed after class to help rearrange books now sat at the back, doodling silently or staring at the window for long stretches. His favorite teacher, Miss Ifyinanya, tried gently asking what was wrong. He shrugged. "Nothing," he said. But his eyes betrayed him. One day, during recess, she found him behind the swing set, holding a folded paper. It was a drawing, a crude, innocent sketch of him, Amanda, and Obiajulu, holding hands with the sun smiling above them. She knelt beside him and asked, "Is that your family?" Daniel hesitated, then whispered, "It was." The moment broke her heart. She sent a gentle report to Amanda. Nothing confrontational, just a suggestion that maybe Daniel needed someone to talk to. But Amanda, already exhausted and emotionally drained, barely glanced at the message. "He's fine," she told herself. "He'll adjust. Kids always do." Meanwhile, Tunde interpreted Daniel's withdrawal as nothing more than emotional blackmail from a child still hung up on the past. "He'll come around," he told Amanda casually. "You just have to show him who his real father is." Amanda didn't respond. Somewhere in her chest, something stirred, a voice that questioned the words real and father. She looked at Daniel's recent drawings and noticed something else. Obiajulu's figure was always smiling. Tons was always missing. And she began to wonder, had she replaced peace with presence? Security with history? She shook the thought away. Her pride, still bruised from the kiss and the anonymous message, reminded her. You saw it. You heard nothing from him after. You owe him nothing. But her heart didn't fully agree. And Daniel's pain was starting to seep through the walls she had built so carefully around herself. The day Amanda found the old voice note from Obiajulu was the first time in weeks that she felt her hands tremble, not from anger, but from sorrow. It was buried deep in her recordings app, likely saved by accident. She almost deleted it before she heard his voice, soft, unsure, but genuine. I don't know what the future holds, Amanda. But I do know this. I've never felt more like myself than when I'm around you. Thank you for seeing me before the world did. The voice cracked at the end. A pause. Then a sigh. Amanda's hand covered her mouth, and for a moment, the tears came without resistance. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it, like someone whispering in a room they didn't know they were allowed to be in. And it reminded her of all the moments they'd shared. His patience with Daniel. The way he helped at the boutique without asking. How he never tried to own her. Only support her. And suddenly, the kiss seemed like something more complex than betrayal. But complexity didn't erase pain. And Amanda's pride wasn't just about what she felt, it was about how she looked. She had left Obiajulu in the hands of another woman. A dying woman. If she returned now, wouldn't the world see her as heartless? Selfish? Fickle? Her friends already whispered about her closeness with Tunde. Her mother had called just last week, praising her for rebuilding the family. And now, if she chose to believe in a man who might have lied, she risked losing her reputation, her stability, and perhaps her son's peace again. But silence was becoming its own punishment. Daniel avoided her gaze more often. Her boutique staff murmured when she was near. And worst of all, the mirror no longer showed her a woman in control, just a woman trying not to drown in a decision she wasn't sure she ever made freely. Still, Amanda couldn't bring herself to reach out. Not yet. Her fingers hovered over Obiajulu's name for hours, but the weight of all the unanswered questions kept her still. She needed clarity, something solid, proof that she hadn't been a fool. And yet, the one person who could give her that clarity was the very man she feared had shattered her. It was then that she remembered something Daniel once said in the back seat during a long drive. Uncle Obi never gets angry, even when he's sad. And maybe that was the real reason she hurt. Not the kiss, not the lies, but the fact that she had hurt someone who never fought back, and now she didn't know how to fix it, or if she even deserved to. Tunde sensed the opening. Amanda was emotionally fragile, Daniel was silent, and Obiajulu had disappeared from view. It was the perfect moment. One Saturday morning, he showed up unannounced with a gold ring in a velvet box. No speech, no proposal on one knee. Just the weight of assumption and history. I know we've been through a lot, Amanda, he began, placing the box on her kitchen table. But I think it's time we think of Daniel. Let's rebuild the home he deserves. Amanda stared at the ring, her stomach tightening. She hadn't even said she loved him. In fact, she hadn't said much at all since he started sleeping over occasionally. And now a ring? Was this comfort masquerading as destiny? She didn't pick it up. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. That for Tunde was enough. He began telling people, casually, subtly. We're working things out, he said at Daniel's school. We're back on track, he told old friends. Amanda overheard once and nearly confronted him, but again, she hesitated. What if it wasn't the worst choice? Maybe Daniel needed consistency. Maybe love didn't have to feel magical. Maybe it just had to be predictable. But deep down she knew Tunde wasn't Obiajulu. He never would be. He didn't listen with care. He didn't help without praise. He didn't apologize without making it about himself. And most of all, he didn't understand Daniel's needs. He disciplined with authority, not empathy. One night, when Daniel spilled juice on the carpet, Tunde shouted so loudly that the boy cried for over an hour. Amanda sat beside her son afterward and hugged him in silence. Her mind swirled. Her heart ached, but her mouth said nothing. And that was the tragedy Amanda didn't see coming. How silence became betrayal. Obiajulu, meanwhile, still hadn't made another move. He had said his piece and stepped back, hoping that maybe the woman he loved would see beyond the noise. But the noise was loud. Linda's posts grew more poetic. Tunde's presence grew more permanent. And Amanda's indecision grew more painful. She stared at the ring box one night after Daniel had fallen asleep, holding it in her palm like a question she couldn't answer. "What if I say yes and hate myself forever?" she whispered aloud. But the house didn't reply. Only the silence did. And it sounded a lot like surrender. The letter wasn't written in haste. Obiajulu took his time, sitting beneath the mango tree behind his modest office. The world around him had grown louder with success, but his heart had never felt quieter or lonelier. He had accepted that Amanda might never forgive him, not because he had truly wronged her, but because someone else had succeeded in framing the moment. There was no proving innocence to someone who had already chosen pain over clarity. And so, instead of another voicemail or unanswered message, he picked up a pen and wrote by hand. The one gesture he believed could still carry weight in a digital world. The letter was heartfelt, but not dramatic. He didn't beg. He didn't blame. He simply poured himself onto the page. "Amanda, I don't know how you remember me now. As a liar? A fool? A man who let you down? Maybe I'm all those things to you now. But I'll never forget what you were to me. The hand that lifted me when I had nothing. The voice that told me I was still worth something. You saw me before the world did. And for that alone, you are forever my miracle. If I never get to hold you again, at least let me say thank you. Not for your love, but for your belief." He signed it simply, Obiajulu. No postscript. No second page. He slipped it into a sealed envelope and handed it to a quiet staff member at Amanda's boutique. "Don't force it on her," he said. "Just place it where she'll find it if she wants to." And then he walked away, not looking back. That evening, Amanda found the letter tucked behind the register counter. At first, she ignored it. But later, in the solitude of her bedroom, she opened it. Her eyes moved slowly over each word. By the final sentence, she was trembling. Her chest ached in a way she couldn't describe. Not rage, not regret, but something deeper. She pressed the letter to her heart and whispered through tears, "Why didn't you fight harder?" But the room was silent. And she knew the answer already. Because Obiajulu had fought enough. Amanda sat in her car the next morning, still parked outside her house long after Daniel had entered with Tunde. She clutched Obiajulu's letter in one hand and the unopened ring box in the other. Her makeup was undone, her coffee cold. A storm waged inside her. The truth was she still loved Obiajulu. Maybe she always would. But love no longer felt like enough. There was too much noise now, too many people watching, too many whispers behind her back, too many wounds that hadn't healed. And worse, the man who had brought her peace had also brought her pain, even if it wasn't his intention. So she sat there in the car, paralyzed by choice, knowing whichever path she took would demand something of her soul. When she finally walked inside, the house was quiet. Daniel was in his room, headphones on. Tunde was in the living room, flipping through the channels absently. Amanda stood in the hallway, staring at him for a long moment. He looked up and smiled, a smug, knowing smile, like a man who believed the game was already won. Amanda didn't speak. She walked over, sat beside him, and laid her head softly on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her closer. She closed her eyes, and as tears slid silently down her cheek, he pressed a kiss on her forehead. Amanda's lips didn't move. Her fingers still gripped the crumpled letter in her pocket, the final heartbeat of a love she didn't know how to revive. Tunde's smirk widened. He had reclaimed what he believed was his. Not through redemption, not through healing, but through timing, strategy, and convenience. Amanda had chosen comfort over courage. And somewhere, far away, in a quiet apartment, Obiajulu sat alone at his desk, reviewing contracts and sipping bitter tea. He hadn't cried. He wouldn't. But he looked toward the window, toward the horizon, and whispered to no one in particular. She was the only fire I wanted to burn for, and yet she was gone. And across the city, Linda laid in her bed, scrolling through photos, smiling quietly. She still clutched the fake hospital report in her bag, unread by anyone but her, and whispered to herself, "They'll never know. He's mine now, even if he doesn't know it yet." Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel TOCHI Stories for more.